How about now? Okay, works now? Okay, fantastic. So literally, consistency beats inconsistency. And one of the reasons that we do the PYRESWAP show all the time, 6 times a week on this schedule, is literally just to embody the spirit of consistency. Now, for those of you who have been tuning in for a while, you guys have known that we've missed a few episodes here and there. I think we've probably skipped maybe, I don't know, maybe 7 times. 7 times in 6 months, we've skipped one. But overall, we're very, very consistent about making sure that we're doing this, whether we're talking to an audience of 5 or 500 or 5,000. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, consistency beats inconsistency. Now, when we literally did a month of Genesis version 2, where we kind of were waiting to do marketing based on whether we could announce the Pocket partnership, and then even after the Pocket partnership was announced, literally the plan A for marketing got scrapped, I wasn't unaware that we were inflating at an extremely high rate. In fact, the inflation rate, the expansion rate of the Genesis was done really, really high as a consolation to the fact that we bricked the first Genesis by trying to taper the emission rate. Does that make sense? The tapering of the emission rate is what bricked the first one. Making sense, everybody? Like, we were going to taper it then, but literally it didn't work out. So we effectively kept it a little high, but like, there wasn't going to be any sort of surprise that this is going to happen to the price chart, okay? Because I want you guys to understand something. If you have this quantity going up while the price is going down, right? If you have quantity going up and selling up, we'll put it this way. Printing, yeah. If printing is up, and if printing is up and selling has 2 upper arrows and burning has 1 upper arrow and buying has 1 upper arrow, if we have these 4 things happening where these 2 rates are outpacing these 2 rates, like, what did you guys expect would happen, right? Like, I knew what would happen, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's not just the rate of inflation outpacing the rate of deflation that causes the price to behave like this. Because if the market were behaving truly rationally, you would only see a daily decrease of maybe 2.3% daily. Does that make sense? Now, a lot of days, at 4.625% daily, that daily expansion, you would assume that roughly half of this was getting kept in liquidity and then half of it was getting sold, right? But if that's the case, you would only see maybe a 2.3, 2.4% like decrease in price. So what actually causes the fact that we would exceed 2.3, 2.4% daily decrease? Like, not only do you have the fact that you have the inflation being higher than deflation, right? Now you have a trend. Does that make sense? Trend speculation. Does that make sense? And speculation begets speculation. Making sense to everybody? You would have the actual bare numbers of inflation over deflation. Now, on top of that, though, like, Web3 is filled with trend traders. Would you guys agree? Trend is generally like considered to be the thing to trade with, like in Web 2, right? In regular markets as well. However, the period of time that you look for a trend is a little bit different in Web 3. So you now have downward trend speculation, and then you have downward speculation based on downward trend speculation, right? So this is the third order of downward price movement. Price pressure. As soon as we do this, a lot of people have had the concern yeah, zero kicks, so they say, technical analysis, TA traders. I'm not going to even unwrap that right now. A lot of people, when we have the deflation rate higher than the inflation rate, a lot of people say, but like, that isn't enough to get us back to peg. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be. Does that make sense? Because just like what I described before, deflation higher than inflation, you now have, what's that word? Trend speculation. And then you have speculation. And do you guys know what else we have? Like literally almost as if I'm doing this all on purpose. You have content and you have marketing. And it's almost like it's all meant to line up around the same time. It's almost like it's all meant to sync together. Does that make sense? Us having content and us having marketing, consistency beats inconsistency. Again, so like what you think affects your health, maybe you ate something bad and had food poisoning once, but your general health is going to be affected more by the stuff you eat day to day than what gave you food poisoning once. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Your day-to-day diet will affect your health overall more than incidence of food poisoning. Do you guys understand that? Because your day-to-day diet is what you're doing consistently. Food poisoning, I imagine most people only have that, at least in the first world, I don't know, maybe 10 times in their whole life. Who here has had food poisoning more than 10 times? Has anybody listening to me had food poisoning more than 10 times? Nobody? Okay, so I still think like less than 20 times in your life, right? So like, would these 20 incidents make a bigger impact on your health than like your day-to-day diet? No, the answer is no. So, an immature worldview is that like, you need an abrupt cause to create a surging effect. By the way, this is wrong. Yeah. You need an abrupt cause to create a surging effect. Now, in creative process versus destructive processes, these are two different curves. So, if you guys remember September 11th of 2001, people were flying airplanes into the World Trade Center, right? And there was a big plane sticking into the side of the World Trade Center. And then the World Trade Center collapsed to the ground, right? You guys remember this? Does anybody on this stream not remember this? It's pretty interesting. I guess in theory, yeah, you can have adults who weren't alive when that happened now. You guys remember this? You guys can all hear me still? Okay. This is true. This may be true during destruction. Does that make sense? But when it was time to build the World Trade Center, do you guys think that the World Trade Center just flew up? Or was the World Trade Center built brick by brick and floor by floor until eventually it was the tallest 2 buildings in the world? I'm gonna ignore. So, during a creative process, they did take sandwich breaks. Okay, I have no idea who that is. Yeah, no idea who Abigail is there. I hope she's trying to be supportive and not trying to be a blatant scammer. Okay, so during a creative process, I want to explain to you guys the factors. Like I'm gonna talk about this. A 10x over like 1 1t. Actually, I shouldn't write t. Let's say 1 day versus Do you guys understand the difference between these two equations? So, when we were trying to market this before, when we were trying to promote this before, we were looking like, hey, how do I just get in front of the right YouTubes, right? And literally we can just have that 10x in 1 day effect, right? Right? Versus an actual process where we're getting perhaps 10% better in 3 different areas that multiply from each other every day. Yeah. Does that make sense? Because 1.1, 1 times 1.1 times 1.1, shit. It is an exponential 0-kex because it's also compounding. It's also compounding. 1.1 times 1.1 times 1.1. So this ends up being 1.331. Does that make sense? But eventually, if you just have that, right, 1.331 times itself, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is it takes 8 days for this to be better than this. Do you guys understand? I'll remember that in the future, actually. The math magic is real, yeah. Math magic is real. But the fact of the matter is that we're not just trying to launch this dApp and then die afterwards, right? A lot of people in DeFi, they're trying to launch a dApp, the launch is the whole product, and then it fucking dies later. Do you guys know what I mean? And yes, and Maddie, the bottom is the strategy as well. Because I'm going to explain how this works using an allegory. I want you to think pistons of an engine versus gears of a transmission. pistons of an engine versus gears of a transmission. Does that make sense to you guys? So the more pistons of an engine that you have firing, the smoother your acceleration curve. Does that make sense? Like, the easier it is for you to get up to a rolling speed. Does that make sense to you guys? So what are our pistons here? Content, platforms, and strategies. Does that make sense? So our Discord is a piston. Our Twitter is a piston. YouTube is a piston. Right? Reddit is a piston. Bitcoin Talk is a piston. 4chan is a piston. TikTok is a piston. You guys follow me? Stickers are a piston. Billboards are a piston. Does everybody follow me? Oh yeah, Lesio, a lot of pistons. Stickers are a piston, yes. Gears of a transmission, yes, literally that. So the fact of the matter is, when we get this right here all happening, that's us in first gear. So when you get external marketing, we should say this. Yeah, first gear. Yeah, our own content. Higher gears. External content. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, you guys, when we did that YouTube coverage, does that make sense? When we were doing YouTube as coverage, it was like we were trying to get second gear momentum when we didn't even really have our own pistons firing. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Yabonks told me this physically in person. He said, if my video got 40,000 views, that's 40,000 people who only need to hear about the project 12 more times before they buy. Do you guys understand that? Like, even if they hear the awareness, all it takes is for them to get a phone call and, like, forget the video, and they're off. All it takes is that for them to see an ad. All it takes is like, okay, I'll put that on the list of the 11 projects I'm going to look at tomorrow. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because, I don't know if you guys know this, there's more people in the AVAX prize giveaway right now waiting for me to send them money than there has been in the 3 previous weeks. Do you guys know this? If you go look at the giveaway, there's more people now waiting. Like, why? Because, like, they just kept hearing about the project from the AVAX talk. Does that make sense? They just kept hearing about it. Yeah, like, it wasn't the first time, right? Just to get them to come for free money, they had to hear about the project a few times. Isn't that interesting? Just to hear about the project. Yeah, just to go get $10 for free. They had to hear about the project a few times. Exactly, Zero Kex. Yes, exactly. Like, it becomes... Before people start working out, they think a lot about working out. Do you get what I'm saying? Before people buy a car, they think a lot about buying a car. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Making clear? So how do we influence that? By giving them tons of signals that they should think about this project. Make sense? I also want to talk about the incantation being smaller because I think people didn't hear me yesterday. There is an upside to every downside in PYRESWAP, in the GPSE. There is an upside to every downside. That upside might not be happening to you, but again, this system is built all around this concept. Tarazu. Now, for those of you who have never heard this word before, it is the Hindi word for a pair of balances. Do you guys understand? So when we taper emissions and the yield gets small, this deliberately disincentivizes larger players and it makes it easier for smaller players. Does that make sense? The smaller players begin compounding their position while larger players are sitting out. Do you guys get what I'm saying? When I talk about getting a daily quota of user base, oh, I mean, yes. You mean this one? Yes. I've had it on my desk before. Yeah, the meme you made with my face, that's me with, yeah. Yes, it has arrived. It's here on the desk even. Yeah. If larger players are sitting out, this allows smaller players to effectively play to get larger players sitting out. Okay. Larger users passing increases EPR for smaller users playing. Do you guys understand this? It's almost like, again, this is not something that's meant to just roll over for whales like the rest of DeFi. Like, you can be the whale. There's advantages to being a whale. There's also disadvantages to being a whale. Tarazu. You can be the smallest actor. There is also advantages to being the smallest actor. Tarazu. There's disadvantages and advantages. Do you guys get it? It's all there. If people are in fact sitting on the sidelines, I literally made a diagram that passing is part of the game. This game, the incantation, fires 4 times daily on 3 different chains. We have plans to expand to more chains. This is not designed for the same person to be doing it every day for 4 times a day. Yeah, I get passionate. I just dropped the marker. Does that make sense? So literally, yeah, there has to be sitting out. There has to be sitting out. There has to be sitting out. Mind blown. Yeah, exactly, Maddie. Exactly. Larger users passing increases EPR for smaller users playing. And then guess what happens to the smaller users? Yes. That's the energy today. Do you guys like my shirt? Okay. Do you guys get it? Like legitimately when we were in the open beta in February, I would personally either play 3 times a day or I was watching it 3 times a day. Does that make sense? But like even me, I don't get to do it daily anymore, right? I can't wait till I have all these fucking content pistons running and then I can maybe start playing again because we'll be marketing again and the user base will be going up again and the TVL will be increasing again and the yield will be going up again. Does that make sense? Like, Why So Cynical might not be able to play because he's a larger user passing. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to begin content marketing again, and we're going to have a bunch of smaller users entering, they'll have an easier time learning the game if they're not scared of Why So Cynical steamrolling them. The only reason they would be is because the rest of DeFi has taught them to fear whales because they only build things that either get crushed by whales or they just collapse under the whale's weight or whales manipulate them. Right? 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 Technically, the incantation witch fault is not a mechanism like this, but the fact of the matter is that I have to deal with all of fucking the DeFi user base's trauma. Does that make sense? I have to deal with their trauma and give them forehead kisses. Yes, we're doing that right now. Yes. Yep. I have to give people forehead kisses to be like, hey, PYRESWAP isn't like this. Red candles can't kill the project. This is not a project that literally just rolls over for whales. We don't even need to also be hostile to whales either. We don't need to either have whale preference, nor do we need to have whale hostility. Does that make sense? There's no whale preference and there's no whale hostility. Most people who are buying at these prices will probably become whales, right? So like, then how the fuck could I have whale hostility? Right? Right? If the yield is down, it's still only down for people with playing with gigantic bags, right? Because you can still get 1% every epoch. Yeah, it might just require whales sitting out around. Now, there's another level of the witch game, and the level of the witch game, which will kind of emerge when we actually have channelers, is where, I guess you could say, advanced witch game. You guys have heard of the idea of like the Coven Conclave, right? And the Coven, you guys have heard about the Coven? Okay, so what would the Coven do? Like, what exactly would the Coven do? Now, you guys might know about the ways that the Knights coordinate with each other during Prince, right? Who here has heard me talk about that? Advanced Night Game, we talk about braiding liquidity, right? Okay, Lesio. Okay, what do you guys think that the witches? What do you think when the knights make agreements with each other about choosing to braid liquidity? Do you think that there's also an agreement that witches can make with each other? What do you guys think that agreement would be? Not even that. Not even that. Huh. Literally, the size of the bag. Yeah. The size of the amount you stake with. Yeah, you can decide that up front. In fact, you can have everybody, especially when the channelers do this, there will be up to 27 channelers in the Discord server, by the way. So with 27 channelers, they can all say, okay, this is the goal bag size on Phantom. This is the goal bag size on BNB. And this is the goal bag size on AVAX when we play the Incantation Witch Vault. Does that make sense? Because if they all are aiming for the middle of the distribution curve, does that make sense? Like if they're all here, the game stays consistent and the rewards remain consistent. Does that make sense? Do you guys know how a cartel works? Well, that's not difference. Agreement at golf game. Ah, yeah. It's EPR price fixing. That's the advanced witch game. Correct, Manny. Correct. So again, the Knights also engage in price fixing when they braid Prince. Do you guys understand? The Knights kind of do TWAP fixing, but the Witches can do EPR fixing. Right? Now the fact of the matter is, if there's 27 Witches and they all agree to like figure out where the middle of the curve is, does that make sense? They can figure out who is not playing in accordance with the Coven rules. Does that make sense? And if they know which wallet, isn't abiding by the Coven's teachings. Yeah. Do you understand how this now changes the incantation and witch vault strategy? Because now you know which wallets are really in the coven and which wallets aren't. Does that make sense? And this right here is also a tactic for witches to figure out who's masquerading. And when I mean knights masquerading. Yeah, we'll definitely need to increase our user base to really kind of like bring this to life. But yeah, if you can imagine, there'll be 9 channelers. If we're on 3 different chains, we have 27 channelers. You could think that we have 9 channelers per chain, but channelers don't need to be even stuck on one chain. They can be on all 3 chains. And if they just have like a standing agreement with the other witches that like, hey, this will be the size bag that we all play with, because this way we know that we're either all getting the same amount of yield, the same amount of incants, and we're also keeping yield above a certain threshold, right? We're keeping yield, we're not going to crush yield down to dust, right? There is a level of trust that you have to extend and a level of risk. It's always, again, what's the word? What's the word? There's a level of trust and a level of risk. Thank you. Yes. Terazu, but yes. Tiramisu. Thank you guys so much. Yeah. Bilancia. Yes, exactly. But it's actually it's more than Bilancia. Yeah, I think that Alessio, in English at least, balance means 2 different things and scale means 2 different things. Like too many different things. So like I use the Hindi word terazu because in Hindi this only means the actual pair of balances. Does that make sense? Like literally it only means that device. It doesn't mean like scale a wall or like balance a checkbook or whatever else, or work-life balance, things like this. Make sense? The night game also has that same concept. You always have a standing agreement that you figure out. Somebody will either hold it or some people won't. And by the way, it's from these standing agreements where the credit union concept comes from. Does that make sense? Because people who are honorable in these agreements, they eventually end up having higher credit ratings in later phases of PYRESWAP. Does that make sense? Because later on, the user base gets to decide what creditworthy behavior is, what creditworthy behavior is, and what creditworthy behavior isn't. Oh, and by the way, there's also this system, I want to say it's in phase 2 or phase 3, called the Oath and the Pact. And the Oath and the Pact is the Pact is also an agreement among witches. And the Pact can be sealed or unsealed or broken. And it has to do with the arcane incantations too. But again, the reason we use Discord so heavily with this project is that like this is a team-based trading game, and this is meant to put people in teams that don't necessarily have the same agenda, because that's kind of what helps balance the entire economy. So like you don't have to learn every part of PYRESWAP, but like if you want to learn PYRESWAP, whatever part you do like, you should learn the shit out of it, in my opinion. So right now you'll notice that we had this distribution curve, and the whales, which are over here, they're now sitting out. Now the fact of the matter is, the whales could also just look to see what the average amount getting played with is, and then reduce their bag for that. And then from them doing that, eventually the EPR would go back up, and they could at least keep playing, but it wouldn't be with as large of a bag. Ray Dalio literally says, you don't want to put so much money in an investment strategy that it stops being profitable. Does that make sense? He says that sometimes you want like a certain percentage of profit in that strategy, but you don't need to keep feeding it with money to the point that returns diminish. Do you guys get what I'm saying? The human layer is intricately part of the GPSE. I think a lot of people can't see the human layer in Web3, but it's one of the most important layers. The human layer is why you have crypto summer and crypto winter. The human layer is why price charts behave the way they do. The human layer is why you have things like exploits. The human layer is also why you have these things that go to the moon and they're trash. You just see these glimpses of human behavior. So imagine this. Imagine that Electronic is a channeler over there on BNB. Got it. Okay, Lizia. Well, it's also like a very, very close to it. So like imagine that like channeler has 500 D share staked at, dibs, right? And let's say that all of the channelers, they also have D share staked at dibs. Because why? They are betting on dibs, nights, masquerading to peg, right? Now, for those of you who don't know, if a dibs nights are masquerading to peg, they're in fact depressing the price of PYREBNB because they are in fact swing trading PYREBNB to make little climbs of dibs up to peg on the velvet row pattern. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Now, the channelers can hedge against this masquerade depleting their price because what they can do is they can hold their print, right? So let's say that the knights win. The witches can hold their print almost as if they're loyal knights braiding. Does that make sense? But then when they decide that they want to play for an arcane incantation and go to the fucking conclave, they can dump all of their dibs for PYREBNB in the last minute of the fucking epoch. Does that make sense? They can literally just crush dibs to pump PYREBNB, stake it into the fucking Witchfall, and then go arcane if they work together as a coven. Does that make sense? Yeah, we'll get there. I have to first teach people active staking. We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there. But again, I'm really glad you guys got into the habit of saying good morning to each other, because in the future, you're going to need to be discussing more important things than good morning. Okay? I'm glad you guys have really stepped out of your introverted, autistic Discord shell and now, in fact, kind of have a rapport with each other. Because we're building a real decentralized credit union. And believe it or not, it is how we all esteem each other in credit that will determine our credit worthiness. In fact, if you go to my Discord profile and you see the banner ad, it's literally a quote from a guy who was one of the first people who designed credit unions. Literally, he said, the reputation that you have with everybody else will literally be what determines your credit worthiness. So we are literally turning the reputation of pseudonymous people on Discord and Twitter and YouTube, whatever your wallet is, and you're literally going to be able to turn it into a fucking instrument that pays you. Yeah. Reputation-based systems that pay you. Credit. That's how credit works, you guys. Yeah. That's how credit works. They're looking to see if they can trust, when a bank is establishing your credit score, they're looking at how much they can trust you and then how much they can risk. What they can trust you with, what is a risk. And they find the balance, and that turns into a number. What do they look at? They look at your activity and your history. Thankfully, we're on a blockchain, or we're on 3 of them, so we can always see activity and history. Anyways, I wanted to show you guys a little bit more of the advanced witch game because I feel like some of you guys think that if the whales are passing on the incantation, this is like a setback. It's not a setback. The game is designed like this, okay? Like it's not designed that like you would want to be in there 4 times a day. I know that a lot of you guys are original 2-ohm investors, so I know you think every epoch I need money. Every epoch I need money. But like no, you don't. Yeah, in fact, passing might make more sense, especially when we get the velvet rope pattern back into prominence. Because maybe if liquidity is deep enough, it might make sense to trade the velvet rope pattern rather than stake on it. It might. I believe that in February and March, maybe it was UC Biscuit, there were people that succeeded at trading it for profit even with like 12 players. Even with like $200 in liquidity, whatever we had. Yeah. I think Clan Tonso might have been the guy, or maybe it was Seabiscuit. Is either one of them. I think maybe it was Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit that actually did. Yes. Yeah, like there's more opportunities for that. Yeah. There's more opportunities for that. Exactly. Well, I wouldn't call it stress-free. Yeah, I wouldn't call it stress-free. Because everybody, like again, that's also a strategy that saturates, right? If you've seen me talk about this, where you have this velvet rope pattern, this smile. If there's too many people speculating on this, by the way, you can see this now on the chart. You can see this now happening all the time. What happens is it ends up looking like this. Oh yeah, well now decay is off. Anyways, you can even see it now, by the way. You can even see the velvet rope pattern doing shit like this as of literally the last couple days. Like you can see it's very flat. It's very flat right now, but you can even see this pattern showing up again. And this is just an over-speculated velvet rope. Does that make sense? Oh well, now the great news is now we have hyperinflation instead, right? Always a balance, always a balance. But don't worry, we'll be turning that off soon. Okay, the point being here is that if too many people are trading on the velvet rope pattern, they may in fact get faked out. Do you guys see this? I should point this out on screen share eventually. So that is always there as well. Yeah, like you can in fact invert the rope if enough people are speculating on it. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Gorgeous. Okay, let's see. Do you guys have questions? Today's Friday, so we won't be back on until Sunday. The Turkish Twitter account got suspended. We're figuring out how to get it unsuspended. Don't know why it got suspended, but it got suspended. We're working on fixing that. We have new stickers coming today, and yeah, we're going to be increasing our content strategy here shortly. We're going to be upgrading everything. We're going to just be expanding shortly. There we go. Anyways, do you guys understand pistons of the engine versus gears of the transmission? arguably there's another gear where it's like the second gear is like external content that we like get with through a vendor, but then you have, thank you, very very demure, very I don't know the meme. I've heard of it, yeah. A third gear is like you have derivative content getting spun up that you didn't even ask for. Does that make sense? Mindful, yeah. That's I don't really understand the meme, but apologies. Yeah, I've been too busy, laser focused on performing financial miracles in the world of Web3. But yeah, like literally, so like first gear. This is the native content, right? Native content marketing. Second, and this is like external, but it's like by request. You know what I mean? Either we paid somebody, or we made a deal with somebody, or we struck a deal with somebody like, hey, will you make a video about us, etc., right? But then there's third gear, and third gear is where you really know you fucking made it. Third gear is external without request. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like literally, if we have 50 people like drop a YouTube video and then, exactly that. Like literally, if you have enough things going on with it, then you could say that examples of this would be maybe people that we get one video for, they'll do a second video on their own. Does that make sense? Like it just worked out for them. Or we could also say that people are just covering it because they now see other people covering it and they want to just get in front of the hype. They want to just get in front of a... You understand what I'm saying? Anyways. That's what also happened for Bitcoin. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like Satoshi Nakamoto doesn't need to pay people to make Bitcoin content anymore. Yes, Maddie, also true. They get benefit from that because they called it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly true. They're like, hey, you know me, I called PYRESWAP when it was 0.01 TWAP. And it's like all they knew is that they saw 50 other people cover it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, this is about 50 minutes. We can talk about, okay, next week, the United States has a holiday on Monday. So, like, the markets react to this. I want you guys to know something. September... Usually the saddest month in stocks. Did you guys know that? September historically is the worst month of the year for the stock market, like most of the time. Alessio, this might not affect us, to be honest. This might not affect us. All right. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to wrap it up here because I have more content to shoot today, actually. And more on that later. Any other questions? Any other questions? Last call for questions. All right, thanks everybody. Well, have a great weekend. And yeah, we're signing off. Yeah.